The cashier slid the diapers aside, and I knew before she spoke that my card had failed again. The red declined message glowed on the little screen between us, bright enough to make my face feel hot beneath the grocery store's fluorescent lights. Somewhere behind me, a shopping cart squeaked in an uneven rhythm. The refrigerated cases hummed along the back wall, pushing cold air across my ankles, while the smell of rotisserie chicken drifted from the deli and made my empty stomach tighten. "Would you like to try it again?" the cashier asked quietly. I looked down at Lucy, strapped against my chest, her 10-month-old cheek pressed into my faded gray sweatshirt, one tiny fist curled beneath her chin. "Yeah," I whispered. "Please." I wiped the chip against my jeans, even though I knew that wouldn't change the balance in my checking account. $12.83. That was what I had when I left our apartment. The diapers alone were $17.99 before tax. I had stood in the baby aisle for almost 10 minutes comparing package sizes, calculating price per diaper on my phone while Lucy tugged at my hair. The smaller pack cost less, but the larger one would last long enough to get me through my Friday shift at the diner and the weekend cleaning job at the dental office. I had chosen the smaller pack anyway. Now, even that had been too much. The card reader beeped. Declined. Again. Behind me, someone exhaled sharply. Another person's keys jingled against a shopping cart handle. I didn't turn around. I opened my wallet and pulled out everything inside. 2 wrinkled $1 bills, 3 quarters, a dime, and 4 pennies. The bills felt soft from being folded and unfolded too many times. "Can you take off the apples?" I asked. The cashier removed them. The total dropped. And the oatmeal. Another beep. The baby wipes too. My fingers moved faster now, pushing things away before I could think about what tomorrow morning would look like without them. Lucy stirred against me. Her diaper bag smelled faintly of baby powder and the lavender detergent I bought at the dollar store. I touched the outside pocket automatically. 2 diapers left, 1 for tonight, 1 for morning, then nothing. "Try it now," I said. The cashier did. The red message appeared again. My throat tightened. "How much am I short?" She glanced at the screen. $6.47. $6.47. I stared at the pack of diapers sitting beside the register. White plastic, blue lettering. 32 diapers sealed inside like something ordinary, something every mother should have been able to buy without turning her bank balance into public entertainment. A man behind me shifted his shoes against the tile. I could see only the edge of him in the reflection of the dark card reader screen. A charcoal suit, crisp white cuff, silver watch. He had been standing there the entire time. "I can put them back," I said. The cashier hesitated. "Honey, are you sure?" Lucy made a small, restless sound and pushed her warm forehead against my collarbone. I bounced her gently. "It's okay. I'll figure something out." I reached for the diapers. Before my hand touched the package, Lucy kicked one sock loose. It dropped beside my shoe. I crouched awkwardly, one hand supporting her back while I reached beneath the cart. The tile was cold against my fingertips. Behind me, there was no impatient sigh this time, no complaint, just the soft electronic chime of the payment terminal. I straightened with Lucy's tiny pink sock in my hand. The cashier was placing the diapers into my bag. I blinked at her. "Wait, I said I couldn't." She looked past me. I followed her eyes. The man in the charcoal suit was sliding a black wallet back into his jacket. Tall, dark blonde hair neatly combed back. Pale blue eyes already turned toward the exit. He hadn't said a word. "Sir," I called. He paused for half a second, but didn't turn. "You don't have to do that." He lifted one hand slightly, almost like he was saying it was nothing, then kept walking beneath the bright supermarket lights. The automatic doors opened with a rush of cool evening air, and he disappeared into the parking lot. I looked down at the receipt trembling between my fingers. At the bottom, beneath my failed payment attempts, was a final approved charge for exactly $6.47. I lifted my eyes toward the glass doors again, suddenly needing to know who the silent stranger was, and why a man dressed like he owned half the city had noticed a mother who couldn't afford diapers. I pushed through the automatic doors with the diaper bag digging into my shoulder, but the man in the charcoal suit was already halfway across the parking lot. The pavement still held the day's heat, and the air smelled of gasoline, wet concrete, and the fried food drifting from the strip mall across the road. Lucy shifted against my chest as I hurried after him, her new package of diapers bumping against my knee inside the plastic grocery bag. "Sir!" I called again. He stopped beside a black sedan parked beneath a buzzing yellow lamp. For the first time, he turned fully toward me. Up close, I noticed the details I had missed at the register. The clean line of his white shirt collar, rain-darkened leather shoes, the faint silver at his temples. He looked like someone who belonged behind tinted glass, not in a discount grocery store watching a woman count quarters for diapers. I held out the receipt. "You paid $6.47. His eyes dropped to the paper, then back to me. He gave a small nod. "I know." His voice was low and even. "Then let me pay you back Friday." I pulled one of the wrinkled dollar bills from my wallet, as if offering it could restore something the declined card had taken from me. He didn't reach for it. "Keep it." "I don't want charity." A cart rattled across the asphalt somewhere behind us. Lucy made a sleepy sound and rubbed her face against my sweatshirt. The man glanced at her, not with curiosity, but with the careful distance of someone who understood that a baby in a stranger's arms was not an invitation. "It wasn't charity," he said. "The diapers were already at the register. You were short. I paid the difference." "That sounds a lot like charity." One corner of his mouth moved, almost a smile. "Then call it $6.47. That doesn't need a name." Before I could answer, a metallic crash snapped through the lot. A grocery employee near the cart return had lost control of a stack of boxes on a flatbed. Cans rolled beneath parked cars. A case of bottled water split open, plastic bottles bouncing across the pavement. Two customers walked around the mess without slowing down. The man beside me moved immediately. He took off his suit jacket, folded it over the hood of his car, and crossed the lane. "You okay?" he asked the employee. The kid looked barely 20. "Yeah, just embarrassed." "Nothing broken?" "No, sir." The man crouched and began gathering cans. His white shirt pulled tight across his shoulders as he reached beneath the cart return, and the knees of his expensive trousers touched the dirty pavement without hesitation. I stood there holding my receipt, listening to bottles knock together and cartwheels squeal. He didn't look around to see who was watching. That was what caught me. At the register, no speech. Here, no performance. He simply saw something that needed doing and put his hands on it. I shifted Lucy higher and set my grocery bag on the hood of a nearby car stop. "Here." I crouched too, collecting 2 rolling soup cans before they disappeared under an SUV. The employee stared between us. "You guys really don't have to." "Apparently we do," I said, passing him the cans. The man looked at me then, and this time the almost smile became real. For less than a minute, the 3 of us worked in the harsh parking lot light. My palms picked up grit from the asphalt. His cuff brushed against a damp cardboard box. Lucy watched from my chest, blinking at the clatter as if this were the most interesting thing she had seen all day. When the last bottle was back on the cart, the employee thanked us twice. The man wiped his hands with a paper towel the kid offered him, then returned to his sedan. I followed more slowly. "You always do that?" I asked. "Do what?" "Help people who didn't ask." He opened his car door but paused. Only when pretending not to notice would be worse. That answer stayed between us for a second. Then my phone buzzed inside the diaper bag. I checked the screen. A reminder filled it. Caldwell Health Systems, temp data entry interview, Monday 9 a.m. I had applied to dozens of jobs over the past month. This was the only interview I had landed. I quickly silenced the alert, but when I looked up, the stranger's eyes had already flicked away from my phone. He slipped on his jacket. "Good luck Monday," he said. I froze. "You saw that?" "Just the company name." He opened the driver's door. "They're hard to get into." "You know them?" His hand rested on the roof of the car. For the first time that night, he seemed to choose his words carefully. "A little." Then he got inside, started the engine, and pulled away before I could ask his name. I stood beneath the yellow parking lot light with Lucy warm against my chest and a package of diapers I had not been able to afford 10 minutes earlier, watching his taillights disappear onto the avenue. On Monday morning, I decided I was going to walk into Caldwell Health Systems, earn that job on my own, and make sure I never had to stand at a register choosing between my pride and my daughter's diapers again. Monday morning, I walked into Caldwell Health Systems wearing the only blazer I owned and carrying the same diaper bag from the grocery store because I had no one to leave it with after dropping Lucy at daycare. The lobby was all glass, brushed steel, and pale stone, so polished that my shoes clicked louder than I wanted them to. Cold air poured from ceiling vents, carrying the faint smell of coffee and lemon cleaner, while a wall of digital screens flashed company numbers I barely had time to read. I checked the time on my phone. 8:47 a.m. 13 minutes early. Good. Early meant prepared. Prepared meant nobody had to know I had spent the bus ride counting what remained in my checking account after daycare took its automatic payment. I crossed toward the reception desk, rehearsing my introduction under my breath, when the elevator doors opened across the lobby. A group of executives stepped out first, navy suits, leather portfolios, low voices clipped around words like acquisition, quarter, and compliance. Then he appeared behind them, charcoal suit, white shirt, pale blue eyes. The man from the grocery store. I stopped so fast the strap of my diaper bag slid off my shoulder. For 1 second, the noise around me thinned into the soft ding of the elevator and the squeak of rubber soles across stone. He saw me. His stride slowed. I looked past him, searching for some explanation, maybe a visitor badge, maybe someone else he had arrived with. Then a receptionist stood straighter behind the desk. "Good morning, Mr. Caldwell." My fingers tightened around the folder holding my resume. Mr. Caldwell. The name from the building. The name on the interview confirmation. Ethan Caldwell. The CEO. He glanced at the folder in my hands, then at me. "Monday," he said. The same low voice from the parking lot. I managed one word. "You." One of the executives beside him looked between us, but Ethan didn't explain. He stepped away from the group. "Claire, right?" My name sounded different coming from him. Too precise. "How do you know my name?" I asked. He nodded toward the resume folder. My name was printed across the clear plastic front. I looked down, then back up. "Right." Heat climbed into my face. Ethan's gaze dropped briefly to the diaper bag. A pink pacifier clipped to the zipper swung against the worn canvas. "Interview?" he asked. "Temporary data entry." I lifted my chin a little. "And before you say anything, I didn't know this was your company." I wasn't going to say anything. "You paid for my diapers." The words came out louder than I meant them to. A security guard glanced over. I lowered my voice. "You paid the difference. Then you helped that employee outside. Then you told me good luck. And now I find out you run the place I'm interviewing for." Ethan slipped one hand into his pocket. "All true. So what happens now? You go to your interview. That's it?" "That's it." I studied his face, waiting for the part where the favor grew strings. There were none. At least not yet. An assistant approached him with a tablet. "Mr. Caldwell, the 9 o'clock call is ready." Ethan nodded, then looked back at me. "Your interview is on 12. Human Resources, East Conference Room." "I know." "Good." He turned to leave. Something inside me snapped into motion before I could overthink it. "Mr. Caldwell." He stopped. "Please don't tell them you know me." The assistant's eyes flicked up. Ethan's expression changed by less than an inch, but I saw it. "Why?" "Because if I get this job, I need to know I got it because I earned it." The lobby felt colder suddenly. A cappuccino machine hissed from the cafe behind us. Somewhere above, another elevator chimed. Ethan looked at the worn cuff of my blazer, the resume folder clutched against my chest, then back at my face. "Understood." He turned to his assistant. "Miss Bennett is here as an applicant. Nothing more." The assistant nodded once. Of course." He started walking away, but I called after him again. "And the $6.47? Ethan glanced over his shoulder. "Still not a debt." Then he disappeared into a private elevator marked Executive Access. I stood there for half a second before forcing my feet toward the elevators on the opposite wall. On 12, a recruiter handed me a skills test and pointed toward a small conference room. The air smelled faintly of printer toner. Fluorescent panels buzzed overhead. I sat down, rolled my shoulders back, and worked. 45 minutes later, I corrected a duplicate billing entry the sample file had been designed to hide, reorganized the spreadsheet, and finished with 6 minutes left on the clock. When the recruiter returned, she stared at the screen, then at me. "You caught the insurance code mismatch." It threw off 3 columns. Most applicants miss it. I closed the laptop. I don't like numbers that don't belong. She almost smiled. Then she slid my resume back across the table. We have 2 finalists. I can move you to the last interview this afternoon. My hand stopped on the folder. Today, at 3. I thought of Lucy at daycare, the late pickup fee, the bus schedule, the money I didn't have. Then I thought of the diapers sitting beside her crib because a stranger had quietly covered $6.47. I pushed the resume back toward the recruiter. I'll be here at 3. By 2:43 that afternoon, I was standing in the 12th floor restroom, pressing a damp paper towel against the back of my neck and calculating whether I could make it to Lucy's daycare before the late fee doubled. The mirror lights were too bright, flattening every tired line beneath my eyes, and the air smelled of hand soap and the burnt coffee someone had abandoned beside the sink. My phone showed 3 missed calls from the daycare office. I called back immediately. Claire? Miss Jensen answered over the muffled sound of children singing in the background. Lucy's fine, but I need to remind you pickup is at 5:30. I know. I'm sorry. I have a final interview at 3. After 5:30, it's $1 a minute. I closed my eyes for 1 second. I'll be there. Okay. We'll keep her ready. When the call ended, I stared at the screen. I had $19 left until Friday. If the interview ran long, I could lose most of it before I even reached the bus stop. I slipped the phone into my diaper bag, squared my blazer, and walked back into the hall. The final interview was with 2 managers from operations and 1 HR director. No Ethan. That mattered more than I wanted to admit. The conference room was colder than the lobby, and the polished table reflected the white ceiling panels like a sheet of ice. One manager pushed a stack of sample records toward me. We move fast here, she said. Accuracy matters, but so does judgment. Tell me what you'd do if a supervisor asked you to process something you believed was wrong. I ran my thumb along the edge of the paper. I'd verify it first. And if you were still sure, I'd say so. The other manager leaned back. Even if it made you unpopular? Especially then. Silence held for half a beat. Then the HR director glanced at my resume. You've had gaps. I had a baby. And childcare? I thought of Lucy's pink sock on the supermarket floor, the unpaid late fee waiting at 5:30, the package of diapers beside her crib. Handled, I said. The interview lasted 42 minutes. When I stepped into the hallway, the digital clock above reception read 3:52. I exhaled through my teeth and headed toward the elevators. The doors opened before I reached them. Ethan was inside alone. For a second, neither of us moved. Then he held the door. Going down? Very. I stepped inside. The elevator smelled faintly of cedar and metal, cooler than the hallway. As the doors slid shut, my phone buzzed again. Daycare. Please confirm pickup. I typed yes with one thumb. Ethan glanced at the screen, then away. Interview go well? I think so. That sounds cautious. Cautious is cheaper than confident. His eyes shifted toward me. What does that mean? It means I don't celebrate jobs before I have them. The elevator descended 3 floors. Claire. His tone changed, more deliberate. HR told me you're the strongest candidate. My grip tightened around the phone. Why did HR tell you that? Because I asked how the temporary hiring round was progressing. Did you ask about me? He didn't answer quickly enough. The elevator hummed beneath our feet. I pressed the button for the lobby even though it was already lit. You said nothing more, I said. You told your assistant I was just an applicant. You are. Then why are you checking? Because I know you. You know I was short $6.47 in a grocery store. My voice sharpened despite myself. That is not the same thing. The doors opened on 8. A man in scrubs stepped in carrying a paper cup that smelled strongly of peppermint tea. We stood in silence until he got off on 6. As soon as the doors closed again, Ethan spoke. I didn't tell them to hire you. But you asked. Yes, that matters. He looked straight at me. You want the truth? I want the line to stay where you said it would. His jaw shifted. Fine. I noticed you because you were willing to put back everything except what your daughter needed. Then you followed me into the parking lot to argue over $6. I wasn't arguing. You offered me a wrinkled dollar bill like it was a contract. Because I pay what I owe. Exactly. The elevator stopped at the lobby. I stepped out, but Ethan followed. The late afternoon sun cut through the glass wall in long gold bands, and the lobby cafe hissed with steaming milk. Claire, I can make one call and guarantee you the position, he said. I stopped so abruptly that the diaper bag swung against my hip. No, you didn't let me finish. I don't need you to. You need the job. I turned to face him. Yes, I need the job. I need diapers. I need daycare. I need groceries that don't come off the belt one item at a time because my card keeps declining. My fingers closed around the strap until the canvas bit into my palm. But if you hand me this job because you saw me at my worst, then every paycheck will feel like another $6.47 I never earned. Ethan said nothing. People crossed behind us, shoes tapping over stone, badges clicking against belts. I stepped closer and lowered my voice. You helped me when I couldn't help Lucy. I will never forget that. But don't turn one decent thing into a reason to own the next part of my life. His expression went still. Then he reached into his jacket, took out his phone, and made a call. Marissa, he said when someone answered. Remove my name from Claire Bennett's application notes. No executive consideration. No exception. She competes on score only. He listened, then added, and if she doesn't rank first, she doesn't get the job. He ended the call and looked at me. There. Now even I can't help you. I should have thanked him. Instead, I checked the time, tightened my grip on my bag, and started toward the doors. Good, I said, because if I come back tomorrow, I want it to be because I beat everyone else. At 8:12 the next morning, my phone rang while I was fastening the last clean diaper from the open package around Lucy's waist. She kicked both feet against the changing pad, making the thin plastic cover crackle beneath her, while pale kitchen lights spilled through the blinds and the radiator clicked beside the wall. Please don't pee for 5 seconds, I whispered, reaching for my phone. The caller ID read, Caldwell Health Systems. I answered before the second ring. Claire Bennett speaking. Claire, this is Marissa Cole from HR. I froze with one hand on Lucy's ankle. Good morning. Paper rustled through the speaker. We finished scoring yesterday's candidates. Your assessment ranked first, and the interview panel unanimously recommended you. I looked at Lucy. She grabbed my finger and tried to put it in her mouth. Are you offering me the job? I am. Temporary Data Operations Associate, 32 hours a week, with the possibility of conversion after 90 days. I sat on the edge of the couch because my knees had stopped feeling reliable. The upholstery scratched through my pajama pants. Somewhere upstairs, pipes groaned behind the wall. Yes, I said. Absolutely. Yes. My first shift began 2 days later. By noon, I had processed 47 records, corrected 2 duplicate patient account numbers, and learned which office printer jammed if you loaded more than half a ream at once. The operations floor smelled of toner and reheated lunches, and keyboards clicked beneath the steady whisper of the air conditioning. Nobody mentioned Ethan. Nobody mentioned the grocery store. That was exactly what I wanted. At 1:15, I carried my lunch into the employee break room, half a turkey sandwich, an apple, and a small bag of crackers. I had just unwrapped the sandwich when a woman from records named Denise opened the refrigerator, stared inside, and quietly closed it again. Forget your lunch? I asked. She rubbed her palms over her scrub pants. My son took my last 20 for a school trip this morning. I thought I had something in here. I looked at my sandwich. Then I tore it in half. Take this. Claire, no. I ate a huge breakfast. It was a terrible lie. My breakfast had been 2 bites of Lucy's banana while standing at the sink. Denise looked at me for a second, then accepted the sandwich. Thank you. It's turkey. Nothing heroic. I pushed the crackers toward her, too. A shadow moved across the glass wall beside the break room. Ethan was walking past with 2 executives. His head turned just enough that I knew he had seen us. I immediately looked down at my apple. 20 minutes later, an office assistant appeared at my desk carrying a paper bag from the cafe downstairs. Claire Bennett? Yes. She set it beside my keyboard. Warm bread and roasted chicken filled the air. Mr. Caldwell asked me to bring this. My hand stopped above the keys. Take it back. The assistant blinked. Excuse me? Please. I stood, picked up the bag, and crossed the floor before I could reconsider. Ethan was leaving a conference room when I reached him. I held the lunch bag against his chest. No, he caught it automatically. You skipped lunch? I shared lunch, and now you have none. That's my problem. Claire, this is exactly what I asked you not to do. Voices softened around us. I lowered mine. At the store, Lucy needed diapers, and I was $6.47 short. You helped before I even knew your name. I can accept that for what it was. I tapped the bag with one finger. But this is different. Ethan looked down at it. It's a sandwich. From the CEO. Does that make the bread more dangerous? It makes people wonder why I'm getting it. His eyes moved across the operations floor. A few faces turned quickly back toward their monitors. He understood. Without arguing, Ethan handed the bag to a passing facilities worker. Have you eaten? The man looked startled. Not yet. You have now. Ethan gave him the lunch. Then he faced me again. Better? Better. I turned toward my desk. Claire. I stopped. Why give away half your lunch when you barely had enough yourself? The question sat between the hum of computers and the bitter smell of coffee. I rubbed my thumb over the worn edge of my employee badge. Because I know what it feels like to stand somewhere public and realize you don't have enough. His gaze dropped briefly toward my hands. He knew exactly which moment I meant. That night, I continued, you could have made me explain myself. You could have asked questions. You could have made everyone watch while you played hero. I met his eyes. You didn't. You just paid. Ethan said nothing. That mattered more than the money. For once, the man who seemed to have an answer for everything had none. I returned to my desk and worked until 5. When I packed my bag, I found Ethan waiting near the elevators, not blocking my path, not carrying anything for me. I heard you, he said. No lunches, no favors, no special treatment. The elevator chimed. I stepped inside. Before the doors closed, he added, but someday, Claire, I'd like you to tell me what someone in my position should do when helping one person isn't enough. I held his gaze through the narrowing gap between the doors. Start by noticing the people who never get to ask. 3 weeks later, I learned exactly what Ethan meant when he asked what helping more than one person might look like. It was 7:06 a.m., and I was already at my desk because arriving early let me leave early enough to reach Lucy's daycare without paying another late fee. The operations floor was nearly empty, washed in blue-white light from the windows, with only the low hum of ventilation and the bitter smell of the first pot of office coffee hanging in the air. I had one hand around a paper cup and the other moving through a batch of employee reimbursement records when Denise dropped into the chair beside mine. You're here before the sun again. Daycare math, I kept typing. Every minute after 5:30 costs money I'd rather spend on diapers. Denise gave a tired laugh, but it disappeared when she opened an email on her phone. They raised mine again. I looked over. Daycare? $40 a week starting next month. She locked the screen and tucked the phone away. That's groceries. I knew exactly what she meant. $40 wasn't abstract when you measured life in wipes, bus fares, and how many diapers remained in an open package. By 9, the floor had filled with ringing phones and clicking keyboards. I was reviewing a spreadsheet when a shadow stopped beside my desk. Ethan, no assistant. No lunch bag. Morning, he said. Morning. His eyes moved to the 2 monitors in front of me. You're early. You're observant. I've been told. I kept working. He didn't leave. What? I finally asked. You said I should notice people who never get to ask. My fingers stopped on the keyboard. And? I've been trying. Before I could answer, my phone vibrated against the desk. Daycare. My stomach tightened on instinct. I answered immediately. This is Claire. Lucy had developed a low fever. Nothing alarming, the director said, but center policy required pickup within 1 hour. I looked at the clock. 9:18. Then at the unfinished records on my screen. I'll be there. When I hung up, Ethan had already stepped back. Go. I need to tell my supervisor. Then tell her. I'm still in my 90-day period. Claire? His voice stayed quiet. Your daughter needs you. I saved the file, stood, and grabbed my bag. I'm not asking you to fix it. I know. That stopped me for half a second. He wasn't reaching for his phone. He wasn't offering a car. He wasn't making a call. He was simply moving out of my way. Thank you, I said, and ran. The elevator was slow, so I took the stairs for 4 floors before catching another car down. By the time I reached the lobby, my palms were damp, and my breathing sounded too loud against the marble walls. I had almost reached the doors when I saw another woman from billing sitting on a bench near security with a little boy beside her. He wore a dinosaur backpack and held a plastic cup of cereal. School closed, she explained when she caught me looking. Teacher workday. My sitter canceled. Her supervisor was on the phone 10 feet away, trying to decide whether she could stay. I looked from her son to the daycare message still glowing on my screen. Different mother, same calculation. Work or child, paycheck or care. Always a choice that wasn't really a choice. I reached Lucy's daycare 40 minutes later. The room smelled of disinfectant and warm milk, and tiny paper handprints covered the walls in red and yellow paint. Lucy was curled against Miss Jensen's shoulder, cheeks pink, hair damp at the temples. The second she saw me, both arms reached out. I took her and pressed my lips against her warm forehead. "I'm here, baby." That afternoon, after her fever came down and she fell asleep against my chest, I opened my work laptop at the kitchen table. The radiator ticked beside us. A clean diaper crinkled beneath Lucy's pajamas as she shifted in my arms. Instead of opening my unfinished records, I created a new document. Childcare impact, hourly and temporary staff. I wrote down what $40 a week meant over a month. What late pickup fees cost. What happened when a childcare center called during a shift? What losing even 4 hours of pay could do to a household already deciding which groceries went back at checkout? Then I added the sentence I had never expected to type inside a corporate document. $6.47 can be the distance between a mother leaving a store with what her baby needs and leaving without it. The next morning, I printed 3 pages. The paper came out warm beneath my fingers, carrying the sharp smell of toner. I walked past my own supervisor's office, past HR, and took the elevator to the executive floor. Ethan's assistant stood when she saw me. "Do you have an appointment?" "No." I placed the document on her desk. But he asked me what someone in his position should do when helping one person isn't enough. Through the glass wall behind her, Ethan looked up from a conference table. Our eyes met. I pointed at the pages. "Tell him I finally have an answer." Ethan read my 3 pages, standing beside the conference table, while 8 people waited for him to speak. Morning sunlight cut through the executive floor windows and flashed across the steel edge of the table, while the ventilation whispered overhead and fresh coffee steamed from white porcelain cups no one was touching. I remained near the glass door with my employee badge resting against my blazer, close enough to see Ethan stop at the sentence about $6.47. His thumb stayed there for a moment. Then he looked at me. "You wrote this?" "Last night." A gray-haired man at the far end adjusted his glasses. "Ethan, we have the quarterly cost review in 12 minutes. Ethan placed my pages flat on the table. "Then this belongs in it." The man glanced at me. "And she is?" "Claire Bennett, data operations." "Temporary data operations." Another executive corrected. I felt the plastic edge of my badge against my fingers. Ethan didn't look away from him. "Does that change the numbers?" Nobody answered. He pulled out the chair beside him. "Claire, sit." I stayed standing. "I didn't come here for a seat. I came because those numbers are about people downstairs." Ethan's eyes held mine for a second, then he nodded. "Then show us." So I did. I walked to the display, connected my laptop, and put my spreadsheet on a screen large enough to make every dollar impossible to ignore. $40 a week, I said, pointing to the first column. That's one recent childcare increase for one employee. 200 late pickup minutes in a month can cost another $200. One unexpected closure can erase most of a shift. Someone shifted papers behind me. I clicked to the next page. When hourly employees lose childcare, the company loses hours too. People call out. People leave early. Some quit. The gray-haired executive folded his hands. What exactly are you proposing? That Caldwell keep its childcare assistants and expand eligibility to temporary hourly workers. A woman near the window frowned. Expand it? We're reviewing whether to cut it. The room went still. I turned toward Ethan. He didn't interrupt. Cut it? I asked. The woman tapped a financial packet. It's one of several discretionary benefits under review. I stared at the word projected behind me. Childcare. Discretionary. I saw Lucy's 2 remaining diapers in the side pocket of my bag, the red declined screen, my groceries disappearing from the checkout belt one item at a time. For you, it's discretionary, I said. For a mother trying to get through a shift, it can be the difference between keeping a job and losing one. The gray-haired man leaned forward. Ms. Bennett, with respect, a corporation cannot absorb every employee's personal expense. I didn't ask it to. That appears to be exactly what you're asking. I unplugged my laptop. The connector clicked sharply against the table. No, I'm asking you to stop pretending childcare has nothing to do with whether employees can physically show up here. His mouth tightened. You've been employed here 3 weeks. Yes. Perhaps you should spend more time understanding the business before advising its leadership. Ethan's chair moved back with a soft scrape. I looked at him, expecting him to end the conversation. He didn't. Let her finish, he said. The executive exhaled. Ethan, this program costs nearly $500,000 annually. Finance recommends eliminating it at the end of the quarter. End of the quarter. 6 weeks. Denise's $40 increase. The woman from billing sitting in the lobby with her son and a dinosaur backpack. Me racing out because Lucy had a fever. None of those people knew a clock had already started above their heads. I closed my laptop. Then give me the employee data. Excuse me? Absentee hours. Turnover. Temporary worker attrition. Overtime caused by short staffing. Give me 6 weeks of records and let me compare the cost of the program with the cost of losing people who can't afford care. The gray-haired executive gave a humorless laugh. You think you can overturn a finance recommendation with a spreadsheet? You hired me because I'm good with spreadsheets. Ethan lowered his eyes for a moment, and I caught the smallest movement at the corner of his mouth. The woman near the window checked her watch. The board packet closes Friday at noon. If there's no alternative analysis by then, the recommendation goes forward as written. Friday. 4 days. Ethan looked at me. He could have ended it there. He could have told them to keep the program because he was the CEO, the same way he could once have paid for everything in my cart, instead of quietly covering the exact amount I lacked. Instead, he turned to the finance team. Give Claire the records she requested. The gray-haired man stared at him. You're putting a temporary employee into a board-level cost review? I'm giving your recommendation a chance to survive contact with the people it affects. Then Ethan looked at me. You wanted no favors, so this isn't one. He slid my 3 pages back across the table. You have until Friday at noon to prove your case. I picked them up, feeling the warm paper beneath my fingertips. 4 days earlier, $6.47 had been enough to keep diapers in my hands. Now I had 4 days to prove that sometimes the smallest amount of help was exactly what kept a working mother standing. At 11:41 Friday morning, I placed the final spreadsheet on the boardroom screen with 19 minutes left before the recommendation became official. The room smelled of dark coffee and warm electronics, and sunlight reflected off the glass table so sharply that I had to narrow my eyes to read the numbers. Ethan sat at the far end, jacket buttoned, hands folded beside a closed notebook. He had not touched my analysis. He had not called finance on my behalf. For 4 days, he had kept the promise he made downstairs. No favors. The childcare program costs $486,000 a year, I said. The gray-haired finance executive from Monday leaned back in his chair. Which is precisely why. I'm not finished. My voice came out steadier than my fingers felt around the presentation remote. Ethan said nothing. That silence gave me the room. I clicked forward. Employees who reported childcare disruptions accounted for more than 11,000 hours of unscheduled absence last year. Add replacement overtime, recruiting costs after preventable resignations, temporary staffing and training, and the measurable cost is already higher than the program you want to eliminate. A woman beside Ethan lifted the printed report. By how much? $138,000. Pages turned. A pen clicked. The ventilation whispered through the ceiling. I changed slides again. And that number is conservative because it doesn't price the work that gets delayed when experienced employees leave. The finance executive shook his head. Correlation is not causation. No, I said, but a mother calling out because her daycare closed isn't a theory either. His eyes hardened. This is a board review, Miss Bennett, not a personal testimony. I set the remote down. Then, let's keep it about business. I walked to the table and placed a single sheet in front of him. These are resignation records from the last 12 months. 27 employees specifically mentioned childcare or caregiving schedules. 19 were replaced. Average replacement and onboarding cost, more than $9,000 each. He read the page without speaking. I looked toward Ethan. You once asked me what someone in your position should do when helping one person isn't enough. Every face turned toward him. His expression stayed still, but I saw his thumb press once against the edge of his notebook. Claire, the finance executive warned. I kept going. A few weeks ago, I was $6.47 short at a grocery register. That amount was small enough that most people in this room probably wouldn't notice it missing from their account. Nobody moved. For me, it decided whether my daughter had diapers. The room seemed to lose every sound except the faint buzz from the screen. Ethan was standing behind me. He didn't ask why I was broke. He didn't make me explain my life in front of strangers. He didn't buy everything in my cart and turn me into a story about his generosity. He paid exactly what I lacked, and he walked away. Ethan lowered his eyes. That is what this program can be, I said. Not charity, not a reward for people who failed to plan. A bridge across the small gaps that can become enormous when you live paycheck to paycheck. The finance executive closed the report. Compelling, but we are not governing a corporation by anecdote. Ethan finally opened his notebook. Good, he said. Then govern it by the numbers she just gave you. The recommendation has already cleared finance. Finance recommends. I decide what goes into the operating plan. The executive's jaw tightened. Keeping the program reduces projected margin by less than the cost created when we remove it, assuming her model holds. Ethan turned to me. Does it? I picked up the remote and displayed the methodology page. Every formula is linked to payroll, attendance, recruiting, and HR records. Finance can audit it cell by cell. Ethan looked around the table. Then audit it. The finance executive pushed his chair back slightly. And if we disagree? Ethan closed his notebook. The child care program stays. Silence. Effective next quarter, eligibility expands to temporary hourly employees after 30 days. Finance will measure retention and absenteeism for 12 months. If the data says Claire is wrong, we review it again. Ethan, that's the decision. His voice never rose. It didn't need to. The clock on the wall changed to 11:57. 3 minutes before the deadline, the recommendation was dead. Chairs moved. Papers gathered. People began filing out. I remained beside the screen until only Ethan and I were left. He walked toward me and stopped on the opposite side of the table. You beat them with their own numbers. I told you I don't like numbers that don't belong. He almost smiled. Then I reached into my wallet and placed $6.47 on the glass between us. A 5, a 1, a quarter, 2 dimes, and 2 pennies. Ethan stared at the money. Claire, I can afford diapers now. He looked from the bills to me. And you still think that was a debt? No. I slid the money back into my wallet. That's why I'm keeping it. His brow lifted. I picked up my laptop. So the next time I see someone standing at a register $6 short, I can stand behind them. 4 months later, I stood in the same grocery checkout line with a package of diapers beneath my arm and enough money in my account to buy them without checking the total first. The fluorescent lights still buzzed overhead. The refrigerated cases still breathed cold air across the tile, and the deli still smelled like rotisserie chicken and warm bread. Lucy sat in the cart, wearing a yellow sweater, drumming both palms against the handle while I unloaded bananas, oatmeal, wipes, milk, and the larger box of diapers I used to calculate down to the last penny. My temporary position at Caldwell had become permanent after 90 days. The childcare program had stayed. Attendance numbers were already improving, and the first expanded reimbursements had gone out to hourly workers the week before. None of that appeared on the grocery store walls. There were no photographs, no speeches, no plaque with Ethan's name. That seemed fitting. I was reaching for my wallet when I heard the card reader beep at the register ahead of me. I'm sorry, the cashier said softly. It declined. A young mother stood there with a little boy balanced on one hip. Her coat zipper was broken near the bottom, and loose strands of blonde hair clung to her forehead. On the belt sat bread, bananas, a jar of peanut butter, and a small package of diapers. Try it again, she said. The machine beeped. Red letters appeared. Declined. My hand stopped inside my purse. The mother looked at the total, then began removing things. Peanut butter first, bread next. Leave the diapers, she whispered when the cashier reached for them. The little boy tugged at her collar. Mommy? I know, baby. Coins clicked onto the counter from her palm. Quarters, dimes, pennies. I knew that sound. I knew the way she kept her eyes on the register because looking behind her would mean seeing everyone waiting. I knew how heavy a package of diapers could become when you were deciding whether you deserved to carry it home. "How much is she short?" I asked. The mother turned. "No, it's okay." The cashier checked the screen. $8.12. I pulled out my card. "Add it to mine." "Please," the woman said quickly. "You don't have to." I remembered saying those exact words beneath these exact lights. "I know." I tapped my card against the reader. A green checkmark appeared. Approved. The cashier bagged the diapers. The mother stared at me, her lips parting as if she needed to find the right explanation for accepting help. I didn't make her. "Take care of him," I said. She looked down at her son, then back at me. "Can I at least get your name?" I smiled. "Claire." "I'll pay you back, Claire." I glanced at the diapers in her bag. "Someday, stand behind someone else." She covered her mouth with one hand, nodded, and pushed her cart toward the exit. I watched the automatic doors close behind her. Then a familiar voice came from directly behind me. "You kept the money." I turned. Ethan stood there holding a basket with coffee, pasta, tomatoes, and a loaf of bread. No executive entourage. No assistant. Just a dark wool coat and the same pale blue eyes that had once watched me put groceries back one item at a time. "Not the same 647, I said. "Inflation." He laughed quietly. Lucy recognized him and slapped both hands against the cart handle. Ethan stepped closer. "Hey, Lucy." She offered him a crushed cereal puff. He accepted it with the solemnity of a business contract. I looked at his basket. "CEO buys his own groceries?" "Occasionally. It keeps me informed about pasta prices." Important market intelligence. The cashier began scanning my groceries. Beep, beep, beep. I watched the diapers move across the glass scanner and remembered the first time they had stopped there because I couldn't take them any farther. Ethan placed his basket on the belt behind mine. "The board reviewed the first childcare report today," he said. "And?" "Absenteeism is down. Retention is up." "So I was right." "You're enjoying this too much." "I earned it." "Yes," he said, "you did." The cashier gave me the total. I inserted my card. For one ridiculous second, I found myself holding my breath. Approved. The receipt printed with a dry mechanical rattle. I took it between two fingers and looked at the amount. No failed attempts. No removed groceries. No stranger covering what I lacked. Just a receipt I could pay myself. Outside, the evening air was cool against my face, and shopping carts rattled across the parking lot. Ethan walked beside me without reaching for my bags until I handed him one. He took the heavier one. "I never thanked you properly," I said. "You tried." "I argued with you in a parking lot." "Repeatedly." I stopped beside my car. Lucy babbled from the cart while a nearby lamp cast a soft circle across the pavement. "You didn't rescue me, Ethan." He waited. "That's what I understand now. You gave me $6.47 at the exact moment I needed it. Then you let me do the rest myself." His eyes moved toward the store doors, where the other mother had disappeared. "Looks like you did more than that." "So did you." He looked back at me. "Because of you." I shook my head. "Because you noticed." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Ethan lifted the grocery bag into my trunk, and I buckled Lucy into her car seat. Before I closed the door, she waved at him with both hands. He waved back. I looked through the glowing supermarket windows at another checkout line forming beneath those unforgiving fluorescent lights, then at the man who had once stood silently behind me when I had nothing left to put back. He had paid for one package of diapers without asking for anything in return, and somehow that quiet $6.47 had taught both of us that the smallest kindness becomes powerful when it leaves the next person standing tall enough to give it away.